We're back for another edition of The Gold Standard here on Fox 19 Now. And again, this week, Charlie is on the road. Can you update us where you are right now, Charlie?
I'm in the big city. Reds at Mets this weekend. I can report this morning I had a delicious bagel. You know, I've had lox before. They had pastrami style salmon on the menu, like smoked salmon, but prepared like pastrami. Had that on the bagel with some lettuce, some onions. I had a great breakfast.
Okay, so when a guy like you goes out in the Big Apple, where are you going tonight?
Well, you see, here's the beauty of New York. And so, like, I've actually told this to like Cincinnati athletes because they come in, they don't know a ton about Cincinnati. It's a common chit chat thing. And I said, the difference is, and I'm from Cincinnati, I love Cincinnati, but in Cincinnati, you can't be as spontaneous. Now, what I say is we have everything you're looking for. And I truly believe that from the bottom of my heart. You'll find absolutely everything. Go downtown, have a great time. But the one thing you can do in New York is you can just stumble around and, oh, here's this. This is exactly what I wanted. And then you're in. So honestly, I don't even know what my plans are tonight. I'm seeing some friends, but we'll find something, which is, I guess, something you can do in New York.
Okay, as we tape this podcast, it is one day before the Reds start the unofficial second half of the season with a road series against the New York Mets, a team that we all anticipate the Reds will be pacing with to try to get one of those wild card spots in the National League. Let's pick up about your All-Star experience because you were in Atlanta where Elly De La Cruz and Andrew Abbott were. What was your All-Star experience like covering the Reds in Atlanta?
Very cool. Also, just how different the experience was for Elly, you know, compared with the experience for Abbott. Elly De La Cruz very much an all-star among all-stars. Elly was the cool kid. Elly was, I mean, you saw it in the home run derby cruise with Caminero and Cruz. You know how cool you have to be in two home run derby crews. You know, you had Machado and Acuna and Tatis bring Elly out to take a photo, the four of them. He was at the center of it all. He lit up the room. The media attention was through the roof. A behind the scenes thing for his media day. You know, I was there for about 20 minutes of it. And then I talked to the other all-stars, but for all 20 of those minutes, Scott Boras was just standing right there beaming as he admired Elly De La Cruz, you know, lighting up the room. Boras had a lot of clients in there, but Elly was the one who he had his metaphorical arm around. And then Abbott as well. Abbott, you know, we all know how down to earth he is, how humble he is, how relatable he is. He's talking to Schwarber. He's talking to Skeens. He's talking to, you know, Jason Adam, the Padres reliever, all different types of all-stars. Abbott's connecting, Abbott's schmoozing, Abbott's working the room in a very, you know, Andrew Abbott way as opposed to the Elly way. So both of them seem to really get a lot out of it.
You had a tweet the night of the home run derby that no one is having more fun than Elly De La Cruz. Can you kind of paint the picture of some of the things you noticed about Elly during the home run derby that made you think that?
So first of all, real quick, like I wouldn't do it, but someone should just make their living room the pink carpet with the white couches and the T-Mobile signs to be like the home run derby living room. So most people are in their chairs. Elly's on his feet the entire time. Elly's bouncing around, jumping around, recording, videotaping. You saw him on TV when someone needed a towel. He was waving it. He was waving it around. He was very intensely giving advice and then just talking to him about it after too. I mean, there was just a genuine, like, that was fun about it. And Elly, you know, Elly's Elly. This was a chance for him to be with his peers. And that really clearly brought something out of him. Kind of like me tonight. I'm going to see some buddies. They're my peers. I go way back with these guys. Something about being with that group. And you saw that with Elly. And he said specifically out of the players from the Dominican Republic, you could see just how excited he was to be enjoying it all with them.
Charlie, if anybody's watching this on the streaming portion of Fox 19 now, they can see you're beaming, talking about seeing your friends. If you're on the podcast, maybe you can hear it in his voice. It's awesome to see you light up like this, talking about your friends. But I want you to paint one more picture for me, because I've covered All-Star games, we've done Super Bowls, and they always put some of the high-profile guys at these podiums, and there are these huge crowds around these players. Someday I'll tell you my story of Tom Brady and how I got stuck at Tom Brady's podium session before one of the Super Bowls. When you're with a camera and a tripod, there's nowhere to go. It's a bad place to be. But paint the picture of what it was like for Elly De La Cruz at the All-Star Media Day. How many people were around him? Was he at a podium? What did it look like?
So at the All-Star Media Day, which was in a small theater, like a stage theater, also where they had the draft. They cleared out the room. They gave 8 players, 4 on each side, a roped off, then table, then like a bar chair. Think of it like that they're up on, preparing for the big crowds around them. There were 8 players. Elly was one of them. He was right next to Ronald Acuna Jr., who is the hometown guy. You know, the equivalent guys on the other side in terms of who got the same ones were like Shohei and Yamamoto had the equivalent stalls on the other side. When the AL came in, that was Vlad Jr.'s podium. Kind of behind the scenes, it starts out with the managers press conferences. So you know how this is when you're covering one of the stars. You know what? You just go to stake out. Here's my spot. And so I was waiting, and then to bring the players in a way that wasn't really communicated to us or any of the other lots of media members who were thinking the same thing. Clear the room. But they didn't necessarily have the numbers to clear the room. So I did leave the room. Originally, we were told go upstairs. I did not go upstairs. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. No one did, but Elly got in. I was right there for the front of the podium. Spent about 15 minutes with him, you know, a lot of it in Spanish, which, of course, I wasn't using that, but it was just fun to see the passion he speaks with, talking about different topics in Spanish. I interviewed Francisco Lindor, about the shared connection between him, Elly, and Terry Francona. I did a story on what would Elly look like if he did the home run derby. So I talked to Pete Alonso about that. I talked to Kyle Schwarber about that. Schwarber himself had just been talking to Andrew Abbott about that. Talked to Suarez, talked to a couple other of those guys. It was a lot of fun.
All right, I'm going to follow up on the Elly home run derby, but I'll give you my quick Tom Brady story because you kind of went where I went, where you're trying to stake out a position. So this is when Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson here in Cincinnati, was playing for the Patriots, and he finally made a Super Bowl, was up in Indianapolis. So I went up there to do the Chad is finally playing in a Super Bowl story. And I had the bright idea of, well, I'm going to get early in on Tom Brady, get the Chad question to Tom Brady, and then get out of there and go look for Chad. So I got there super early, one of the first guys there. I set a tripod up right in the front row where Tom Brady's podium is going to be. And now imagine about 200 media members who fill in behind you once Tom starts talking. And when you get your question asked, and it was great, how do you get out of there? You can't, especially when you have a tripod and a camera. So for anybody that's ever going to cover someone at a podium like that, be prepared with an exit strategy. I had to end up crawling out of it. It's a hilarious story of me trying to get away from Tom Brady. Okay, the Elly story, the home run derby. We talked about this on the podcast. Will Elly ever do a home run derby? You had a chance to talk to other players about it. You talked to him about it. What was your sense about Elly and a future home run derby hypothetical?
I get the sense that he's definitely interested. He likes the idea. It's just about timing. And I think he's been a bit banged up this year. He's obviously played every day. You know, you're battling stuff, and he's had a lot going on. And this wasn't the year. And I very much, his feeling was this wasn't the year. Now, I think it'll happen at some point. I think a lot of it too will be about the timing of where it is, and also maybe who else is participating. Like that group of 4, like one day could the stars align and like Tatis, Machado, Acuna say, Elly, come on, let's go. Let's do this. And also, too, this came up, if it was in Cincinnati, which, of course, it won't be for the next several years, I think that would be a real consideration as well. But then the way that his peers talked about Elly doing the derby, like the money quote I thought was Kyle Schwarber saying what he knows about Elly, and, of course, we know this as well, is the way he rises to the moment, is the way that he just brightens up on the stage and the persona he embodies in those types of moments, but the cool. And he basically was like, that's what everyone wants to see. Pete Alonso echoed that. He said and he's like the home run derby. He's the Joe Danneman, the dean of the home run derby. What Pete Alonso stressed was what it really is like a boxing match, a battle of wills, because you get tired, you know, you have to survive one fight to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think Elly's got that in him too. So I don't think there's any doubt what he'd be capable of on that stage. And I know this for a fact, the league would like to get him there.
Yeah, and I think everybody listening to this who's a fan of the Cincinnati Reds wants to see it at least once. It's almost like LeBron James never did the slam dunk contest. And that stinks as a basketball fan. We never got to see that because growing up, that was one of the rites of passages that you needed to become a superstar. Jordan, Dominique, Kobe, go down the line. LeBron never did it, and it was disappointing. As a basketball fan, we never got to see that. Okay, let's now look forward. You're in New York to cover the Reds this weekend to start the second half, and it starts off with a bang against the New York Mets, who are one of those teams in the race for the wild card in the National League. As this sets up for the second half, how do you feel about the Reds' positioning, Charlie, right now? Very much in it, but also very much in this logjam of a lot of teams who feel like they're in it as well.
Well, I think you have to start here. The fact that the goal was to win the division this year, and the Reds are just significantly behind, both the Cubs and the Brewers. When you look at not being able to keep pace there, that is a way where it's okay to say this season hasn't lived up to expectations in that point. Now, for a team that's just craving any sort of postseason success, which is 100%, the way it should be, sneaking in, there is no sneaking in. Getting in would be such a milestone for this group. There are a few back. The problem is, and there's a trade deadline ramification as well, how clustered the middle of the pack is in both the AL actually and the NL. So there are all these teams they'd have to chase down. That clustered pack also makes it so there are a lot of teams in the same spot at the deadline as the Reds. Can the Reds go out and get we can talk about him specifically more if you want, but like Eugenio Suarez, well, the Diamondbacks aren't that far behind the Reds. The Diamondbacks could talk themselves to them being in this. So how many buyers and how many sellers are there going to be? We have no idea, and it could be very few sellers. And if there are very few sellers, it's going to be hard to improve this team. So all that adds in together for a Reds team with plenty of work to do.
I would advise anybody who wants a real deep dive into the trade deadline to check out the Power Stacks podcast with yourself and one of my close friends, Brian Giesenslaw. You guys did the trade deadline of Palooza. Did I get it right?
Woohoo!
It was outstanding. Job well done. It's a full hour talking about the Reds and the trade deadline and the ramifications of payroll, a possible 2027 work stoppage that might affect a lot of the Reds' decision-making. But you also used a phrase in that podcast that I wanted to question you about. You said the Reds can't continue just to dip a toe in the water. So understanding, and you've said it on this show, that the Reds are trying to thread a needle, right, without taking on much payroll, with understanding there could be a work stoppage in a couple of years, with knowing they really can't trade some of their frontline starters because of the depth. How does this team make an impact at the trade deadline and not just dip their toe in the water?
Well, first, to understand how much they're going to be able to do that, you need to see what this team looks like for the next 2 weeks. Like, even kind of on a tangible level, like, is Terry Francona going to trust Noelvi Marte to play all 9 innings because of the consistency of the throws? You'd like to learn that, come to that decision in the next 2 weeks. But then from a wins and losses perspective too, the way the Reds stumbled into the deadline last year factored into their decision to trade Frankie Montas. That's all a part of this. You'd like to learn more about this team. You also get to the point where, like, for all these years, 2026 had been circled as the year, as this group's equivalent of what 2012 was to, the last, great, not great, but good run the Reds had. And now you're there. And because of how close you are, 1, and then 2, because of the threat of a work stoppage in 2027, that would rip the rug out of the sport, and also could have impact from the Reds from a payroll perspective and force them to shake things up, as ugly as that might sound. Because of that, it's time. You have to decide, what does this year mean to you? What does next year mean to you? And what does the post-potential lockout work stoppage world mean to you if you have to plan for kind of taking away some payroll and being more prospect-oriented at that time? You could build for any of these windows. These are the big decisions that I'm sure are losing people some sleep.
Okay, so we've discussed names. Names have been discussed all over social media with the Reds, and I won't relitigate the Eugenio Suarez debate we have. You can go back to last week's edition of this show if you want to do that. Same with Byron Buxton. But without saying names, what are some actual, tangible, reasonable expectations of positions or needs that the Reds are going to have that they possibly could address at the trade deadline if they are playing decent baseball the next 2 weeks and put themselves in a position where they feel like they're in it at the start of August?
Well, the problem is that the needs are everywhere. And so that makes you wonder, all right, is this a team that's going to win multiple postseason series if you have needs everywhere? All right, you got McClain at second, you got Elliott short. But aside from that, you could add a first baseman and move Steer to left. We talked about Marte. If they're going to be pulling him after 6 innings, can you find a 9-inning third baseman somewhere? Corner outfield bat, we've been talking about that. Hit the button. Here we go again, talking about corner outfield bats. You mentioned their lack of a rotation depth. They kind of can't trade, as I've said here before, they have 4.5 starters right now because Chase Burns isn't going to be able to pitch 7 innings every 5th day for the rest of the season as they cap his innings. And then their biggest need might be the bullpen. So a lot of it probably will be finding the best deal and being deal by deal specific if they're in the spot to be buyers to figure out what need or 2 or 3 they're going to address, because they're not going to do a huge reverse fire sale and, do the whole take my money thing at the problem at the trade deadline. They're not going to do the reverse either, but that middle ground is a murky, difficult, funky space to be.
I'm going to ask about one player specifically because you've said his name twice now, Noelvi Marte. You recently wrote on Charlie's Chalkboard on Fox19.com that Noelvi Marte is the most interesting Red right now. Why do you believe so?
So when he came back, there was a lot of talk publicly and privately, like, man, just having one more right-handed bat, that's a real threat. That has that real dynamic element to you. Just makes the lineup feel longer. It puts less pressure on, say, an Austin Hayes. It changes what teams can do from a matchup perspective because there's another righty they've got to worry about. And we saw Noelvi did it in late April, early May, and kind of did it, kind of last weekend for a bit too. He has the ability to kind of carry the flag for a bit. Now, none of that matters if his throws to first base aren't consistent. And Terry Francona, the beauty of baseball is it forces you to, the manager to show what they really think of players. Marte's had throwing issues for his whole career. Again, they have to decide right now whether or not he's going to be their guy, because the bat, while it's not proven at all, and there's still polish that needs to happen, the bat can do that. Is the defense reliable enough? That's just a decision they have to make and put their flag into right now.
So I've taken a bit of a dive into Noelvi Marte's numbers, and I wondered about this because it feels like he has pounced on the Rockies, the Marlins, and then that one big game in Baltimore. And 17 of his 23 RBI this season are against the Rockies or that one game in Baltimore. And I wonder how he does against more competitive pitching against teams who are likely going to have arms who are pitching in a postseason. Philadelphia, St. Louis, the Nationals have some arms, and of course Pittsburgh has some arms. In those 4 series, he's 4 for 33. So he's really done well against the Rockies and that one game against Baltimore. I'm still a bit skeptical about him against some of the better competition in Major League Baseball.
How I look at it is, so like last year, you and I could have gotten Noelvi out. Like teams were just lowing away breaking ball, lowing away off speed, lowing away breaking ball. And there was a true hole in his swing that I think he's fixed. Maybe not like fixed, but like figured out for now. And you're seeing pitchers now attack and adjust and kind of make the counter to that counter as the cat and mouse game goes on. So if there's not the hole in his swing, I like where he's at and what he does as a hitter. I think you've seen some opposite field confidence with him. The big thing is, that two-handed follow through instead of that off balance, one-handed follow through. Like that's something that Mike Napoli, a lot of stress to him. He's doing that. Like I like the mechanics that I'm seeing and the advantage that he possesses in the cat and mouse game, but it's still a small sample size. So, neither of us are right. Neither of us are wrong. We'll see.
A 3-pack of Bengals questions as we are now on the doorstep of training camp starting here in Cincinnati. Monday is always a big day. Again, we're taping this Thursday ahead of training camp. Monday is when Mike Brown speaks to the media here in Cincinnati, his one time a year. I always enjoy that conversation with Mike Brown, Charlie. I don't know about you, but if there's one question you're looking forward to either asking Mike Brown or hearing his answer to if someone else asks the question, what are you most curious to hear from Mike Brown before the start of training camp?
So we'll all be asking about Shemar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson and the franchise's approach to contract negotiations. They're, just how they've handled all that for the last 5 years. It's been a big conversation. What I'm most interested in, though, even still is, so this really was the plan to fix the defense? Because mock turtle soup is a day of optimism. It's almost like the draft. Everyone's a winner. The plan is you know, we've got the plan. This is the plan. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix that. Dax Hill's going to be a great free safety. We believe in Nick Scott. Von Bell's going to fix the defense. We can do this every year. And here we are again. And with even less action taken to improving the defense. And I'd like to hear, is there even a positive stance you can take on the defense? Do they even acknowledge that so much is being put on Al Golden's plate to fix players who no one knows about? Like, can they still play that game? Is there some realism about what this defense is and can be? Heck, do they see this as a developmental year for the defense and hoping this to be, a year where maybe the offense carries them and the defense does just enough? Like, what is this defense? Why did you ask Al Golden to do this much? And I won't ask this, but why is Geno Stone this team's starting safety on a pay cut? Those are kind of the themes that are kind of stuck in my head.
That's question one. Question two of the Bengals 3-pack. Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow has been everywhere this offseason. We all watched him on Netflix. He just popped up on the cover of Sports Illustrated. What are you looking forward to most about observing about the Bengals quarterback here at this coming training camp?
Well, first of all, we saw it in OTAs, the story of OTAs, and I phrased it this way to Dan Pitcher. Dan Pitcher agreed and kind of elaborated on this. It seemed like Joe Burrow was pushing the ball down the field to see what he could get away with, and he was getting away with all of it. I think the theme of Joe Burrow's season from an on-field perspective is going to be the zip and the aggression and the almost creativity, like maybe not quite to this extent like we see from Mahomes, but like, how Steph sometimes gets a 3 off and you're like, man, he came up with the idea to shoot from that angle, from that distance, like 4 seconds ago, did 20 things to get to that spot and then showed something elite. Like, I wonder if this is the year where Joe Burrow kind of rips that Band-Aid off, another year removed from the wrist surgery and just more confident in his throwing mechanics that he's ever been. And then the big thing is, I even said this, before the quarterback documentary, but the quarterback documentary, revealed it even further. To me, the most interesting dynamic is sideline Burrow. What is his persona? How much is that something that consciously he's adjusting and evolving to fit what the team needs, which isn't a just lead the offense. What the team needs is another Sam Hubbard. And kind of, can Joe Burrow be this team's Sam Hubbard, Mike Hilton? Of course, they've still got Ted Karras, but like a Ted Karras on the sideline and in the locker room. And can he handle wins where the team doesn't play as well? Better. And kind of, how does he approach all that? Those are such fascinating things to prepare to watch for.
Question 3 in the Bengals 3-pack. You mentioned the defense. There's a lot of players on the defense who have to take a leap forward this year. If you were going to pick one player, and maybe two, who would you say are the two most important players for the Bengals defense to take a big leap this year, a big jump for the Bengals defense to be better?
So I've been thinking a lot. I literally was thinking about this walking through the airport in New York. Like, that's not a lie. And what I kind of realized was, all right, who are the breakout players going to be? Let's play this in reverse. Like, I'm not going to be picking on Geno Stone this season. That's not what I'm doing. But all right, it's not going to be Geno Stone. Jordan Battle, I think, is a player on the rise, but is more of a floor raiser, culture, IQ guy, not a playmaker. So if you're looking for a breakout guy, it's got to be a playmaker. That's not going to be Jordan Battle's game down the field. Dax Hill coming off knee surgery. I think he'll be solid this season, but not quite hitting his upside. Frankly, I'm the low man on the totem pole with DJ Turner. Looking at linebacker, Logan Wilson, I think, will be better this season. I think we've seen his best football. The key is getting back to that level. He's not quite a breakout player. Maybe Demetrius Knight, we'll get back to him, put a pin in him. On the defensive line, it can't be Hendrickson. Is it going to be one of the number 2 edge rushers? Well, we still have no idea who's even going to start between Myles Murphy, Shemar Stewart, Joseph Osai. All 3 of them have massive questions. Injury history for Osai. Lack of any sort of flashes from Murphy, and then Stewart's not practicing. Not going to be TJ Slayton. That's not his game. It's not going to be BJ Hill. So that kind of leads you back to Cam Taylor-Britt and Demetrius Knight. I still see a wide range of outcomes for Cam this season. I'm not necessarily like saying, yes, this is the year where he's going to hit that Pro Bowl talent, just because I think he's better set up to succeed, but I'm not quite there yet with Cam. Demetrius Knight, I guess I'll answer. But even him, kind of similar to Jordan Battle, seems to be a bit more of a floor raiser, tackler, finisher. One more, though. Fig Newton could kind of be a guy, and he's not going to be a playmaker either, but I think he could be someone that's very much in the conscience of what this Bengals defense is in a much bigger role.
Now time for the Gold Rush. This is when I ask Charlie rapid fire questions as we approach the end of the gold standard, and a lot of this is going back to the All-Star game and things you saw, witnessed, wrote about. And I'll start here. You talked to a lot of All-Stars, and again, I advise everybody to go to Charlie's chalkboard, especially read the article about Elly and the Home Run Derby. Who was the most interesting All-Star who wasn't a Cincinnati Red that you spoke to?
It's a great question. I'm going to start with Joe Torre. Obviously, he was one of the honorary coaches. And like there was an Aaron Judge quote that went viral about this, like you could hear a needle drop when he spoke in the AL clubhouse. Well, like I talked to him for 2 minutes, but like it kind of had that same quality. Like this is what a manager is. Like they're just, the way he walked, like the look on his face. That was a pretty cool conversation. The other one was Kyle Schwarber, to give a shout out to a Cincinnati guy. Kyle Schwarber did a heck of a media day on Monday. I got a lot of great stuff from him about Elly that we talked about. Then Tuesday, the clubhouse opens. A lot of the super duper stars kind of weren't around in the clubhouse when it was open to the media. That's fine. That's whatever. Schwarber just held court at his locker for 40 minutes with everybody and was lighting up the room, was telling stories, was doing this, was doing that. All of it was authentic and genuine. I didn't know much about Schwarber, just the person. What an impressive guy that he was just through those interactions.
I'll tell a quick story about Kyle Schwarber when he hit it big his rookie year. I believe that was the year. Was that the year the Cubs went to the World Series? Was that his rookie year?
Right.
Okay.
Maybe the year before, but
gotcha.
Somewhere in there.
I went up to Middletown to interview his dad and his old high school baseball coach, and they told me, and if anybody's ever been to Middletown, there's home plate, there's the outfield, there's the wall, then there's a street beyond the wall, and then there's the football field. This is the old setup at Middletown, and the football field had stands. So you would have to hit a baseball like 450 feet, 475, to clear the stands onto the football field. Whenever Kyle took high school batting practice, they had to tell the girls' soccer team to stop practicing to watch for baseballs that might fly over the stands. So he's been that big of a deal at Middletown ever since high school. Okay, so you mentioned now home runs, Kyle Schwarber. I want to dip now. Second question of the Gold Rush is the Home Run Derby ending that we saw for the All-Star game. You put a tweet out that you'd like to see this maybe in the regular season. Are you standing by that?
So I don't want to see it regularly or even like it should be a once in a blue moon type thing. But my biggest pet peeve in baseball is like there are games that you can like feel that the fear of destroying, killing, obliterating your bullpen is an even bigger priority to managers than winning a game. Like, and this is everyone. This isn't a criticism of Terry Francona. Terry Francona did the right thing. But like there was a game where he didn't manage his bullpen in a certain way in extra innings because he wanted to save Taylor Rogers to be able to go the distance if there was a distance. Like protecting your bullpen, yes, but you reach a point where ultimately even the managers, if they're being honest, would rather just the game end than have to. And you also don't want to like punt. You don't want to lose in a dishonorable way. So you're kind of stuck. And then usually the next day, multiple people who don't deserve to get sent down. Like what I really want to do is kill that back of roster shuffling, which is why the real rule change I want to make is to have 14 pitchers on the active roster and 5 of them inactive, but 5 inactives, just like you get in football. But the offshoot of that is, and I've made one minor tweak to my tweet. If it's past the 10th inning and both teams have used a had at 75%, I'm going to make it more than 75% of their bullpen. So if you've used 7 of your 8 relievers in a game on both sides, then you get the option to do it. So it avoids having to plan and prepare because otherwise our bullpen's just dead. Like, no. And you don't want to lose dishonorably. Like, it's a way to win honorably in situations that managers honestly don't want to be in the first place because you don't want to send someone down. You don't want to destroy all your relievers. You don't want to put a position player out there and punt the game. It's a way to win or lose honorably in games that managers secretly were wishing had already ended.
To finish the Gold Rush, I have 2 ideas. I stand by you. I think it's a fun idea. I will finish the Gold Rush with two thoughts, ideas I have to add to the All-Star Game and the Home Run Derby. You tell me if you're on board with these two. The first one would be adding what we saw at the end of the All-Star Game mid-game. Every 3 innings, you take a pause, you pick one player from each team to take 3 swings, and every home run they hit counts as a run. So you do it after the 3rd inning, after the 6th inning, and then you have it after the 9th inning if a team is still in a 3-run range. I think it would add some intrigue, like, oh, we're getting to the end of the 3rd inning. Who are they going to pick to hit the home runs here? I think that would be a fun twist of the All-Star Game. What do you say?
I like it. I think, well, all right. So I was going to say the game, like a lot of people left after the 6th inning. Like the game didn't last from a fan engagement. I thought and so the 6, I shouldn't discount the Hank Aaron thing was tremendous. That was right around then too. I thought the first 3-4 innings were just perfect. It was all the biggest guys. I think the game kind of needs a pick me up in the middle there. I'd love this after the 6th, let's say. Can you get Aaron Judge to wait an extra 30 minutes as opposed to an extra 2 hours because he was long gone by the 9th? But then have the game still be able to end in a baseball game way. I would do, I'd do it once after the 6th.
Okay. And option 2 or idea number 2, what do you think about USA versus the world at the All-Star Game, kind of like the NHL did with the Nations Cup? That could be either home run derby. I think it's easier to do it for the home run derby. You saw the Dominican contingent. How fun would that be to see Team USA against Team World, or even the Dominican can have their own team and do the home run derby that way?
I'm thinking about this. Like, obviously, the Dominican, the Latin American position player pool is incredible. And there were definitely some Dominican and Hispanic pitchers as well. But I think there might just be like the teams might be a little lopsided in certain areas. Like, for example, I mean, this is just what it is. Like a lot of your up the middle shortstop center field types would probably be on the world team. So I'm just worried that the teams wouldn't line up, especially on a pitching side. But it's interesting. I'd probably be a no. I like the AL.
Okay. How about for home run derby?
I'll pass.
Okay. I like it. Hey,
we tried that. We tried that in the NBA, and it was terrible.
Correct.
It was like the worst dunk contest ever.
That's a great point. Well done, Charlie. We'll finish with the gold standard. You talked to Eugenio Suarez, had a question and answer with Eugenio Suarez. There are going to be so many teams that want him added to their roster if the Diamondbacks are willing to trade him. What was your biggest takeaway from your question and answer with the All-Star who used to be a star here in Cincinnati?
He's doing great. What's incredible is he signed an extension with the Reds in 2018. He's still on that extension. And these are the last few months of that extension. The coolest, I said, man, what happened in 2021? Because he was terrible. And then he's been good ever since. And part of it, he said, part of it was coming off the shoulder surgery that he had in 2020 that caused him to miss some time. But then he said, you always try to look at stuff positively. And I had such a great Reds career. I'm still going to look at the positives with 2021. And I said, well, what were the positives in 2021? And he said, me moving to shortstop, that got Jonathan India in the lineup. And he won Rookie of the Year. And I felt like I had a very small part in that. And that's a pretty cool, and I know India had a successful Reds career, but it's not like he was Joe Morgan. But that's a pretty cool, like, final legacy to leave. It's kind of opening the spot for the next guy. One more thing, too, because while I'm thinking about it, like, thing to remember, the Reds moved India from 3rd to 2nd because they thought Suarez was blocking him at 3rd, and they played 1 year together. So, like, these things do figure themselves out, and getting the reminder of India and Suarez and their careers, like, these things do get sorted out as you fret over which shortstops you're going to play with.
Charlie, you've been out of Cincinnati now for more than a week. You'll be gone for at least 3 more days in New York covering the Reds and the Mets. What can't you wait to do once you get back home?
I'll be getting home late Sunday night. I can't wait for mock turtle soup on Monday is the real truth. I'll probably get a chicken and waffle from Taste in Belgium on Monday morning. Get like a nice fun breakfast because it'll have been a late night the night before. And then see my dogs.
You have multiple dogs, huh?
So my parents have multiple dogs. So I stop by and visit. I mean, they're my siblings. Like they're my dogs too. Sunny and Tiny. They're two Basset Hounds.
Outstanding. The great Charlie Goldsmith on the road right now with the Reds. He'll be back next week. We'll be in studio. And man, Charlie, it's going to be full go Cincinnati Bengals Training Camp the next time we do the Gold Standard. You can check this out every week on all the Fox 19 Now social media platforms, all of our streaming platforms, and of course, anywhere you get your podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on another edition of the Gold Standard.